Friends, I you want to watch super hit movie Shaolin Soccer in English, then you must like this video or visiting our channel for the first time. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Friends, in today's video, the movie we're going to talk about is called Shaolin Soccer. We will talk about what this movie is and where you can watch it, all the interesting facts about this movie in today's video. I am going to tell you, I'm also going to give you all the information on which OT platform or on which satellite channel you will get to watch this movie also. We will talk in detail about the technical department, music department, pre-production, filming, post-production, budget, box office collection of this film. We will also talk about the story of this film, and I will also give you a small review of the story of this film. Apart from this, we will discuss about the facts of this film's storylines, star cast actors' performance in the film, and which character has played which role. That's why I request you friends to watch this video till the end, so let's start the video. Shaolin Soccer is a 2001 Hong Kong sports comedy film directed by Chow, who also stars in the lead role. The film revolves around a former Shaolin monk who reunites his 5 brothers years after their master's death to apply their superhuman martial arts skills to play soccer and bring Shaolin Kung Fu to the masses. Over the years, the film has grown as a cult film. Plot: Golden Leg Feng, a Hong Kong soccer star, beats and berates his teammate Hung when the latter offers him a check to lose the game, claiming to be the middleman. But Feng takes the check in the end and loses the game. Angry spectators beat him and break his leg. 20 years later, Feng walks with a limp and is the mistreated lackey of Hung, now a successful businessman. When Feng asks to coach Hung's soccer team, Hung mocks him and reveals he tricked him with a bad check and hired those who broke his leg. While drinking his sorrows in the streets, Feng comes across Sing, a Shaolin Kung Fu master who wants to promote the practical benefits of the martial art to the world. No one takes Kung Fu classes from Sing. However, as he is dirty and poor, he steals mantou steamed buns from Mui, a woman with severe acne who uses Tai Chi to cook the food. At first disdainful, Feng soon discovers the power of Sing's leg and offers to coach him in soccer. Compelled by the idea of promoting Kung Fu through soccer, Sing asks his former Shaolin brothers to join his team. Sing's brothers eventually agree. As a test, Feng arranges a game with a team known for their vicious cheating. The thug team gives the Shaolin team a beating. When all seems lost, the Shaolin team members reawaken their powers and utilize them to defeat the other team. The thugs ask to join Sing's team. Sing takes Mui to try on expensive dresses at a high-end department store after hours and offers to buy her one. She gets a makeover to impress him, though the team and her boss mock her exaggerated 80s look. When Mui hints at her feelings for Sing, he tells her he only wants to be friends. She disappears after her boss fires her. Team Shaolin enters the Open Cup competition in Hong Kong, where they see ridiculously one-sided victories due to their powers. They only meet their match in the final against Hung's Team Evil, who have superhuman strength and speed due to an American drug. The referee has also been bought out by Hung. Team Evil badly injures 2 of Team Shaolin's goalkeepers. The powerless members of Team Shaolin then flee. As the team is about to lose by default, Mui, who has shaved her head, reappears as their goalkeeper. When Team Evil's striker kicks the ball with flaming force towards Mui, she stops it with Tai Chi. She and Sing combine their skills and rocket the ball downfield. The ball blows through Team Evil's goal while hurling along all its players, scoring the sole and winning goal. Later, Hung is imprisoned for doping, while the Team Evil players receive lifetime bans. Sing goes out for a jog and is pleased to see people around him using Kung Fu in their everyday lives, his lifelong dream having become a reality. A large ad on the side of a building shows that Sing and Mui, a famous couple, have won the world championship in bowling, among other things. Reception. Box office. At the Hong Kong box office, Shaolin Soccer grossed HK $60,739,047, making it the highest-grossing film in the region's history at the time. It held the record until 2004 when it was topped by Stephen Chow's next feature, Kung Fu Hustle. Shaolin Soccer earned a worldwide gross of $42,776,760. Shaolin Soccer is like a poster boy for my theory of the star rating system. Every month or so, I get an anguished letter from a reader wanting to know how I could possibly have been so ignorant as to award 3 stars to, say, Hidalgo while dismissing, say, Dogville with 2 stars. This disparity between my approval of kitsch and my rejection of angst reveals me, of course, as a superficial moron who will do anything to suck up to my readers. What these correspondents do not grasp is that to suck up to my demanding readers, I would do better to praise Dogville. It takes more nerve to praise pop entertainment. It's easy and safe to deliver pious praise of turgid, deep thinking. It's true, I loved Anaconda and did not think the United States of Leland worked, but does that mean I drool at the keyboard and prefer man-eating snakes to suburban despair? Not at all. What it means is that the star rating system is relative, not absolute. When you ask a friend if Hellboy is any good, you're not asking if it's any good compared to Mystic River, you're asking if it's any good compared to The Punisher. And my answer would be, on a scale of 1 to 4, if Superman 1978 is 4, then Hellboy is 3 and The Punisher is 2. In the same way, if American Beauty gets 4 stars, then Leland clocks in at about 2. And that is why Shaolin Soccer, a goofy Hong Kong action comedy, gets 3 stars. It is piffle, yes, but superior piffle. If you are even considering going to see a movie where the players zoom 50 feet into the air and rotate freely in violation of everything Newton held sacred, then you do not want to know if I thought it was as good as Lost in Translation. Shaolin Soccer has become a legend. It's the top-grossing action comedy in Hong Kong history and was a big hit at Toronto 2002. Although for some reason I didn't see it, I must have been sidetracked by Bowling for Columbine. Miramax bought it and shelved it for 2 years, apparently so Harvey Weinstein could cut it by 30 minutes, get rid of the English dubbing, restore the subtitles, and open it 1 week after his own Kill Bill Vol. 2. To put this movie up against Tarantino is like sending Simon Cowell against William H. Rehnquist, but Simon has his fans. The movie has been directed and co-written by Stephen Chow, who stars as Singh, a martial arts master turned street cleaner, who uses his skills in everyday life and is in love with Mui Vicky Zhao, who sells buns from her little street stand and combs her hair forward to conceal a complexion that resembles pizza with sausage and mushrooms. It is a foregone conclusion that by the end of this film, Mui will be a startling beauty. Less predictable is that Singh recruits 7 soccer players from his former monastery to form a soccer team. His inspiration to do this is Feng Man-tat, known as the Golden Leg because he was, years ago, a great soccer hero until his leg was broken by Hung, Patrick Tse-yin. Hung now rules the soccer world as owner of Team Evil, yes, Team Evil, while Feng drags his leg like the hunchback of Notre Dame. It is another foregone conclusion that Team Evil will meet the Shaolin soccer team formed by Feng and Singh in a thrilling match played before what looks like a vast crowd that has been borrowed from a computer game. The game doesn't follow any known rules of soccer, except that there is a ball and a goal. As the players swoop high into the air and do acrobatics before kicking the ball, I was reminded more of Quidditch. There is also the matter of ball velocity. The players can kick the ball so hard that it actually catches fire as it rockets through the air, or digs a groove in the ground as it plows toward the goal. Since the game is impossible and it is obvious Team Evil will lose, there's not much suspense, but there is a lot of loony comedy, a musical number, and the redemption of the poor spotted little bun girl. As soccer comedies go, then, I say 3 stars. It's nowhere near as good as Bend It Like Beckham, of course, but Beckham is in a different genre, the coming-of-age female empowerment film. It's important to keep these things straight. Movie was a high-stakes throw of the dice for Chow, 39, who was the territory's top-grossing star alongside Jackie Chan during the first half of the 90s, but who has worked more sparingly since, mostly on projects for his own company, the star overseas. Soccer is his 3rd star production, following the classic The God of Cookery and more patchy King of Comedy, and breaks a silence of more than 2 years. Though thoroughly Cantonese in their mixture of verbal and physical shtick, Chow's films have often been retreads of Western genres, from James Bond to Jim Carrey movies. Soccer, however, is the closest tribute to his personal hero, Bruce Lee, and incorporates elements from cookery, kung fu meets Chinese cuisine. The big improvements here are in making the digital effects a full team member rather than occasional substitute, and a script that shows some strategy and throughplay. Untranslatable verbal gags are at a minimum. After a simple B&W intro in which soccer player Feng accepts a bribe to miss a penalty kick and ends up crippled after a beating, CG effects make an early appearance as Hung, the villain, smoothly morphs into color and across 20 years to become manager of the evil team. Hung, veteran 60s matinee idol Patrick Tsi, has kept Feng and Man-tat on his staff as a lame lackey. In the street, Feng comes across Mighty Steel Leg, Chow, a Shaolin Kung Fu practitioner reduced to selling garbage who dreams of repackaging his skills. Plot finally kicks in at the half-hour point when Feng notices Steel Leg's mighty kicking powers and persuades him to gather his former Shaolin classmates, all broke, fat, or balding, into a soccer team to challenge Evil Team for the national championship. That's it for plot. But Chow, along with his regular directing partner Li Lek-chi, shows a mature blending of character comedy and physical action throughout the picture. Chow's trademark of building a mock-heroic mood and then suddenly puncturing it is brilliantly shown in an early match versus a Dirty Tricks team, in which our beleaguered hero, crawling through the sand, briefly fantasizes himself in a war movie, all done in a single tracking shot. The gag is then followed by an equally remarkable sequence in which time is literally suspended as his players rediscover their Shaolin powers. Experienced action director Ching Siu-tung and his martial arts team have come up with an array of physical moves that mix in references to kung fu movies without losing sight of character. And as always, Chow shows himself an acute parodist of other genres while adding his own cherry on the top. Most impressively, script sets up ideas and gags that only get their payoff many reels later. Gaming mainland star Zhao Wei makes a perky female lead, initially as a shy, acne-covered Tai Chi expert, and later as the heroine of the day. Between times, she gets one tour de force sequence that moves from comedy, showing up as a cross between Anita Mui and Joey Wang in a Chinese ghost story, through a show of self-confidence against her bullying female boss, to a touching romantic letdown with Chow. Playing by many of Chow's regulars is fine, especially veterans Ying and Sei, the latter having a whale of a time as the cigar-smoking villain. Popular actresses Cecilia Chung and Karen Mok cameo as ace soccer players in dreadlocks and facial hair. Raymond Wong's Morricone-like music is a major component, evoking a Leone-ish heroic tone, and even the main titles have a pulpy energy that recalls those for Fistful of Dollars, mixed with Bruce Lee's The Way of the Dragon. Digital effects by Hong Kong-based Centro have an appealingly cartoonish flavor. Entire film was shot in China, around Shanghai and Zhuhai, where PIC is currently banned for esoteric procedural reasons. Version reviewed is the longer one that replaced the original 97-minute cut in Hong Kong theaters after 3 weeks. Of the two, it's undoubtedly superior. With trimming of an early nightclub song routine, which revolves around a single local joke, this version should be the one to go with internationally. They feel the triumph of forgotten men reclaiming honor. They don't just chuckle at Mui's dough-kneading Tai Chi. They feel her quiet dignity. The score bridges the gap between parody and pathos, turning slapstick into something strangely profound. Pre-production of Shaolin Soccer 2001, before the first ball was kicked, before the wirework and CGI fireballs lit up the screen. Shaolin. Soccer was a dream in Stephen Chow's mind, a vision that required meticulous planning, daring imagination, and a willingness to take risks in an industry that was still finding its footing in the new millennium. The pre-production phase of Shaolin Soccer is a story of creative ambition colliding with practical constraints. It reveals how Chow conceptualized a film that was both a martial arts homage and a sports comedy, and how an entire team of writers, designers, and technicians laid the foundation for what would become one of the most iconic films in Hong Kong. Cinema, conceptual genesis. From martial arts to football field, Stephen Chow was already a celebrated figure in Hong Kong's comedy scene by the late 1990s, known for his Molto style of absurdist humor. But Chow wanted more than comedy. He wanted to create something visually spectacular that could compete with Hollywood blockbusters while retaining local cultural identity. The idea of blending Shaolin Kung Fu with soccer came from Chow's fascination with martial arts legends and his love of sports movies. He envisioned a scenario where ancient martial discipline could be applied to something as contemporary and global as football. In essence, the concept was about bridging East and West, tradition and modernity, parody and sincerity. Absurdity of monks kicking flaming soccer balls was exactly the kind of nonsense Chow specialized in. But behind it was a sharp cultural commentary about forgotten traditions finding relevance in the modern world. Script development building comedy as myth. The screenplay went through multiple drafts balancing slapstick comedy with underdog sports drama. Chow and his co-writers carefully designed each Shaolin brother to embody a specific archetype: the fallen hero, the dreamer, the brute force, the agile trickster, the spiritual healer. By creating a team where each player represented a facet of Shaolin Kung Fu, the script ensured that every character had a purpose, both narratively and thematically. Dialogues were crafted in the Man-tat tradition, silly, exaggerated, and often self-contradictory, but always delivered with earnestness. Chow wanted the absurd lines to be spoken as if they were profound truths, heightening the big comedy while adding unexpected emotional resonance, visual planning, storyboards, and martial design. The biggest challenge in pre-production was visualizing the football matches. Chow knew that traditional sports filming wouldn't be enough. He needed sequences that felt like martial arts jewels. Storyboards became essential. Every major set piece was sketched out in detail: how the ball would transform into fire, how players would soar through the air, how slow motion would dramatize the impact of a kick. Worked closely with choreographers to adapt Shaolin techniques into soccer maneuvers. For instance, Tai Chi movements became defensive dribbles, Iron Head techniques became unstoppable headers, and the famous steel leg became the ultimate striker's weapon. These designs were sketched and refined long before cameras rolled, ensuring the blend of martial arts and sports would feel seamless. Casting decisions, balancing comedy and archetypes. During pre-production, Chow assembled his cast with both narrative needs and audience expectations in mind. He placed himself at the center as Sing the Dreamer, ensuring he could personally embody the film's balance of comedy and sincerity. Man-tat was brought in as the fallen coach, a casting choice that capitalized on his long-standing chemistry with Chow. Vicky Zhao was chosen to bring emotional gravity and soft romance to counterbalance the maladministrated slapstick energy. Danny Chan was cast not just for his talent, but also for his uncanny resemblance to Bruce Lee, which Chow knew would add both parody and cultural homage. Every casting choice was deliberate. The ensemble wasn't just a comedy troupe, but a symbolic representation of forgotten Shaolin traditions, rediscovering purpose, designing the world, locations, and production aesthetics. Location. Scouting during pre-production emphasized contrast. The Shaolin brothers would be introduced in decrepit urban backdrops, dusty alleys, broken down bakeries, crumbling soccer fields, visual metaphors for their forgotten glory. In contrast, Team Evil's stadium and uniforms were designed to look slick, modern, and intimidating, representing commercialization and corruption. Pre-production design. Sketches emphasized exaggeration. Costumes were deliberately cartoonish. Shaolin robes turned into makeshift soccer jerseys. Evil Team's uniforms styled like futuristic armor. The color palette was mapped early. Earthy tones for the brothers, dark metallics for the villains, vibrant surrealism for the football sequences, technical experimentation, early CGI and wire work, planning. Perhaps the most ambitious aspect of pre-production was Chow's decision to rely heavily on CGI, something still relatively new for Hong Kong cinema. Chow and his team conducted extensive tests, experimenting with how to make a soccer ball look like a meteor or a net stretch like a cosmic web. They didn't have Hollywood's budget, so innovation was key. Practical wire work was combined with digital enhancements. Actors were rehearsed with wires months in advance, simulating exaggerated kicks and flights that would later be digitally augmented. Chow insisted on pre-visualizing these effects to avoid chaos on set, rough CGI. Mock-ups were created before shooting began, allowing the team to plan camera movements, stunts, and editing rhythms, in harmony with the visual effects pipeline. Securing financing, convincing studios of the vision pre-production also involved financial battles. Hong Kong studios were skeptical of Chow's vision, especially the heavy reliance on digital effects. At the time, few local films had invested so heavily in CGI, and the combination of slapstick comedy with expensive effects seemed commercially risky. Chow had to fight for his budget, pitching the film as both a comedy for local audiences and a visual spectacle that could appeal internationally. His reputation as a box office draw ultimately secured funding, but not without compromises. The team had to work with a relatively modest budget compared to Hollywood standards, forcing them to maximize creativity. During planning stages to avoid costly reshoots, building the emotional blueprint. Finally, pre-production wasn't just about logistics, it was about emotional architecture. Chow made it clear from the beginning that the film should not be mere parody. Yes, audiences would laugh, but they also had to feel moved by the underdog story. Planning sessions, the creative team often discussed how every technical decision, be it costume design, camera, angle, or music cue, should serve the dual purpose of humor and heart. By the end of pre-production, Shaolin Soccer had become more than a comedy project. It was a carefully planned cultural statement, a reminder that tradition could be reinvented for modern audiences, that local cinema could compete with Hollywood spectacle, and that even nonsense comedy could carry emotional weight if crafted with precision. Filming of Shaolin Soccer 2001. If pre-production was about dreaming big, the filming of Shaolin Soccer was about bringing those impossible dreams to life under the practical pressures of budget, technology, and physical endurance. Stephen Chow's vision demanded not only a rethinking of how a sports comedy could be shot, but also how martial arts choreography, slapstick timing, and computer effects could coexist seamlessly on screen. The filming process became a grueling experiment that pushed the Hong Kong film industry toward new frontiers, while also challenging the actors and crew with one of the most physically and technically ambitious shoots of the era, on-location atmosphere. From dusty alleys to stadiums, the production team scouted extensively across Hong Kong for filming locations, focusing on contrast between decay and spectacle. Early scenes of Singh and the Shaolin brothers were filmed in run-down neighborhoods where peeling walls, uneven fields, and crumbling infrastructure visually symbolized their fallen glory. These scenes required long hours of handheld shooting in the sweltering heat, capturing the gritty realism that would later be juxtaposed against fantastical football matches. For the climactic matches, large stadiums were used, but not always in the way audiences might think. Many stadium shots were filmed in smaller arenas and then digitally expanded in post-production. Extras filled the stands in certain sections, while the illusion of massive crowds was added later through CGI duplication. This decision not only saved costs, but also gave the crew greater control during shooting. Choreography meets sports, martial arts on the football pitch, filming soccer as if it were kung fu required meticulous coordination between choreographers, stunt performers, and actors. Each Shaolin technique had to be adapted into a believable, if absurd, football maneuver. Wire work was central to this process. Actors were suspended by harnesses, leaping across exaggerated distances or spinning mid-air to simulate supernatural agility. These stunts were performed repeatedly to ensure both safety and precision. The challenge lay in blending martial fluidity with soccer mechanics. Kicks had to look like both martial strikes and convincing shots on mat. Filming such scenes often required multiple camera setups. Wide shots captured the scale of movement, while close-ups emphasized impact. High-speed cameras were used for slow motion sequences, exaggerating the power of kicks and tackles to near mythic proportions. Each stunt was rehearsed extensively to avoid injury, as the physical demands were considerable, especially for actors not traditionally Trained in sports, Stephen Chow's directorial style on set. Chow's directorial approach during filming was famously perfectionist. Known for demanding dozens of takes until comedic timing was flawless, Chow often pushed his cast and crew to exhaustion. His insistence on sincerity in performance meant that actors had to treat the gia absurd scenarios with dead seriousness, which sometimes required intense emotional focus in the middle of that slapstick chaos. For the actors, this created a strange duality. They were performing exaggerated comedy under strict disciplined direction. Chow himself often acted out scenes before filming, showing exactly how he wanted the timing, expressions, and body language to play out. This hands-on guidance ensured uniformity of tone, but also extended shooting schedules, as Chow refused to compromise on rhythm, technical challenges, shooting with CGI in mind. Filming was complicated by the heavy reliance on visual effects. Many shots had to be planned with incomplete elements, requiring the actors and crew to perform against imaginary objects or exaggerated placeholders. For example, when a soccer ball was meant to transform into a flaming meteor, the actors kicked empty space or a simple prop with the actual effect added months later in post-production. This required extraordinary trust between actors and prep director. Timing had to be exact so that the eventual digital enhancements would align perfectly with performances. To aid this, the crew often used pre-visualized animatics during filming, showing rough CGI previews so actors could understand what the final shot would look like. Lighting also had to be carefully controlled, since exaggerated shadows, highlights, and reflections would later interact with digital effects. Multiple lighting rigs were used on the field to create consistent conditions across shots that might be enhanced with CGI. Performance intensity. Actors under pressure. The actors endured immense physical and emotional demands during filming. Many of the Shaolin brothers were not professional martial artists, which meant they had to undergo rigorous stunt training, while men also learning how to convincingly perform soccer moves. Harness work was exhausting, with performers often suspended for hours while the crew adjusted angles and camera positions. Vicky Xiao playing Mu faced unique challenges. Her bakery sequences required delicate timing with practical dough, while also layering Tai Chi. Later, her dramatic transformation scene was filmed in emotionally intense conditions, with Chow demanding subtlety and expressions while cameras lingered on her shaved head and vulnerable demeanor. Danny Chan, portraying the Bruce Lee-inspired goalkeeper, had to adopt Lee's iconic mannerisms with precision. This meant endless retakes of specific gestures, yells, and stances until Chow felt the get-parody homage balance was perfect. Chan's scenes often involved wire-assisted saves, which required immense core strength to execute repeatedly without losing Lee's physical grace, set atmosphere, exhaustion, and creativity. The overall atmosphere on set was a blend of exhaustion and creativity. Days were long, stretching deep into the night as Chow pushed for perfection. Crew members recalled the physically punishing pace, especially during the stadium shoots where multiple sequences had to be filmed under hot lights, with actors repeatedly running, falling, or flying on wires. Yet despite the strain, there was a sense of collective innovation. The crew knew they were part of something experimental, pushing Hong Kong cinema into a new digital frontier. Many recalled Chiao's ability to balance his perfectionism with humor, often joking between takes or exaggerating his own instructions to keep morale alive. Logistical hurdles, budget meets ambition. Filming such an ambitious project on a limited budget forced constant compromises. Wire rigs sometimes malfunctioned, requiring reshoots. Practical props such as soccer nets or goalposts often broke under the stress of repeated stunts. To save costs, some sequences were filmed with minimal extras or in smaller venues, with visual expansion handled later in post-production. Chiao's ambition sometimes clashed with budgetary realities, but his creative problem-solving kept filming on track. For instance, instead of building massive sets, Chow relied on creative camera angles and editing to make smaller spaces feel epic. Filming Legacy, a new standard for Hong Kong cinema. By the time principal photography wrapped, the cast and crew were physically drained, but aware that they had created something unique. The filming of Shaolin Soccer redefined what was possible for Hong Kong cinema. It was one of the first films in the region to integrate large-scale CGI with traditional martial arts choreography, and its experimental methods paved the way for Chow's later masterpiece, Kung Fu Hustle. The filming process was not smooth, nor was it easy. It was a battlefield of sweat, discipline, and endless retakes. But that very intensity is visible on screen. The conviction of the performances, the precision of the stunts, the audacity of the visuals, the absurdity of Shaolin monks playing soccer could have fallen flat if not for the tireless efforts of the cast and crew during filming, who made the unbelievable feel both hilarious and heroic post-production of Shaolin Soccer 2001. If the filming of Shaolin Soccer was a test of endurance, then its post-production phase was a test of imagination and innovation. What began as raw footage of actors leaping on wires, kicking empty props, or playing on half-filled stadium sets needed to be transformed into a seamless spectacle of comedy, martial artistry, and sports. Fantasy. Post-production became the place where Stephen Chow's impossible vision, Shaolin monks hurling fireballs, goal, nets bending like cosmic fabric, and players soaring like gods finally took shape. This stage not only defined the yet final look of the film, but also set a new benchmark for the use of CGI in Hong Kong cinema. Editing, the rhythm of comedy and combat. The editing team faced the challenge of balancing two radically different tones, slapstick, comedy, and epic sports drama. For comedic scenes, editing was fast and snappy, cutting quickly between exaggerated facial reactions and sudden mishaps. Chow insisted that every gag land with razor-sharp timing, so editors often trimmed frames down to the millisecond to create the rhythm of surprise and laughter. In contrast, the football matches were edited like martial arts jewels, long takes emphasized the grace of wire work, while slow-motion sequences magnified the impact of kicks, tackles, and saves. Sometimes the editing deliberately drew out a moment. For example, the build-up to a powerful strike only to release it in a burst of frantic cutting as chaos erupted on the field. The dynamic pacing kept the audience constantly oscillating between tension and hilarity. Visual effects, creating a new language for Hong Kong cinema. The most revolutionary aspect of post-production was the use of CGI. Hong Kong cinema had dabbled in digital effects before, but never at this scale. Shaolin Soccer required over 400 effects shots, ranging from simple wire removals to complex digital transformations. One of the most iconic effects was the fireball kick, where a soccer ball blazed across the field like a meteor. To achieve this, animators layered particle effects, digital flames, and motion blur onto practical ball footage. The exaggeration was intentional. Instead of mimicking realism, the visuals leaned into cartoon-like absurdity, echoing anime and video game aesthetics. Another standout was the gold net distortion effect, where the net stretched endlessly like elastic fabric as it absorbed the impact of superhuman shots. This surreal imagery was created by blending 3D simulations with hand-drawn animation, ensuring the effect looked both exaggerated and tactile. Team's sinister powers were also digitally enhanced. Their movements were accelerated, their kicks accompanied by shock waves, and their bodies surrounded by dark auras. These visual cues distinguished them as inhuman villains, amplifying the David versus Goliath dynamic of the final match. Sound design, comedy through exaggeration. The sound department crafted a sonic world where every action, no matter how small, was amplified to absurd extremes. A footstep might echo like a drum. A ball slicing through the air might sound like a missile, and a punch might land with a thunderclap. The design was deliberately cartoonish, but the intensity gave the comedy dramatic weight. During matches, sound layering was essential. The roar of the crowd, the thud of collisions, the swoosh of aerial stunts all combined into a dense, immersive mix. Moments of silence were strategically inserted for comedic effect, such as when a player dramatically prepares a strike only to miss completely. the sudden absence of sound became its own punchline. For Mui's quieter moments, the sound design stripped away bombast. Her Tai Chi Do kneading scenes were accompanied by soft, rhythmic stretching sounds, giving everyday actions a meditative quality. These choices highlighted the film's emotional undercurrents without disrupting its overall comic tone, music integration, emotional anchors in a chaotic world. Post-production, the music was carefully placed to enhance emotional beats. Heroic orchestral themes swelled during moments of triumph, while traditional Chinese instruments underscored scenes tied to Shaolin heritage. The editors often cut visuals to match musical cues, synchronizing kicks, tackles, or comedic mishaps with musical crescendos in romantic scenes between Sing and Mui. Music softened into delicate, airy melodies. These sequences required careful editing to prevent tonal whiplash. Without the score, the shift from slapstick to sincerity might have felt jarring. By weaving music into the fabric of the film during post-production, the editors ensured tonal balance across the narrative. Color grading from grit to fantasy. The visual tone of the film was enhanced during color grading. Early scenes of the brothers' poverty were graded with muted, dusty palettes, browns, grays, and faded greens that emphasized decay. As the film progressed and the brothers rediscovered their power, the palette became brighter and more vibrant. The football matches were graded with high contrast and saturated hues. Greens of the field glowed unnaturally. Skies turned into near mythical backdrops, and energy effects burst with fiery reds and electric blues. This shift visually communicated the film's transformation from realism to fantasy, mirroring the characters' journey from forgotten outcasts to superheroes of sport, ADR. Foley and voice work. Given the physical demands of filming, much of the dialogue was redubbed through ADR, automated dialogue replacement. Chow often re-recorded his own lines, tweaking delivery for comedic precision. Foley artists created hyper-exaggerated soundscapes. Leather gloves smacking cabbages became the sound of kicks. Crushed watermelons mimicked bone-crunching impacts, and hooing ropes simulated aerial spins. This layer of surreal sound design, perfected in post, gave the film its heightened comic book texture. Without it, the visual gags might have lacked punch. Test screenings and refinement. Post-production also involved multiple test screenings. Early cuts reportedly leaned too far into parody, risking emotional detachment. Chow and his editors refined the balance, extending certain romantic beats and trimming gags that undercut dramatic momentum. For example, Mui's transformation arc was emphasized more in later cuts, ensuring she was more than comic relief. These refinements gave the final product its tonal complexity. Ridiculous yet heartfelt, exaggerated yet sincere. Final Cut, a cinematic experiment completed when post-production wrapped. Shaolin Soccer had become more than a local comedy. It was a technical experiment that fused Hong Kong's martial arts heritage with emerging digital technologies. The Final Cut achieved something few films manage. It made the impossible look natural, the absurd feel epic, and the comedic resonate emotionally. For Hong Kong cinema, this marked a turning point. Shaolin Soccer proved that local films could harness CGI not just as imitation of Hollywood, but as an extension of Hong Kong's unique cinematic language. It opened the door for Chiao's next experiment, Kung Fu Hustle 2004, which would push post-production artistry even budget and box office of Shaolin Soccer 2001. When Shaolin Soccer finally hit theaters in 2001, it did not just entertain audiences, it reshaped the financial expectations of Hong Kong cinema. For years, the local industry had been struggling against the wave of Hollywood blockbusters that dominated Asian markets. Many believed Hong Kong films could not compete on a technical or commercial scale. But Stephen Chow's absurd yet heartfelt vision, supported by clever budgeting and an unexpected box office explosion, proved otherwise. To truly understand its legacy, one must look at how much it cost to make, how it performed commercially, and how its financial success reverberated across Asia and beyond. Budget ambition on a tight rope. The reported production budget for Shaolin Soccer was around HK $80 million, approximately $10 million. a considerable sum for Hong Kong cinema at the time. To put that into perspective, most local productions at the turn of the millennium were budgeted at less than half that figure. This meant Chow was asking investors to gamble on a film that mixed slapstick comedy, a genre not always lucrative with expensive CGI effects, still a rarity in Hong Kong. Allocating the budget required careful balancing. A significant portion went into visual effects and post-production, as the team had to create hundreds of CGI shots, wirework rigs, stunt rehearsals, and digital pre-visualization also absorbed funds. Stadium sequences, requiring extras, lighting rigs, and camera setups, were another major expense. Chow saved costs by using partial sets and enhancing them digitally rather than building full-scale stadiums. The cast was mostly comprised of Hong Kong and mainland Chinese actors familiar to local audiences, but not paid at Hollywood. Rates. This allowed the budget to prioritize spectacle over star salaries. Stephen Chow himself, being both director and lead actor, cut down on hiring a high-profile star by anchoring the film. Personally, domestic box office breaking records in Hong Kong. Upon release, Shaolin Soccer became a box office phenomenon in Hong Kong, grossing over HK 60 million locally. This was an astonishing achievement, making it the highest-grossing local film in Hong Kong's history at that time. For comparison, this was more than triple the earnings of many contemporary comedies, proving that audiences craved spectacle, even in a comedic package. The film's success was not purely comedic. It was the blend of traditional kung fu nostalgia, sports drama familiarity, and CGI spectacle that drew in diverse demographics. Families, martial arts fans, comedy lovers, and even sports enthusiasts found something to enjoy. Word of mouth propelled the film to sustained box office dominance, with theaters extending runs far beyond the usual window. Mainland China, a breakthrough in the market. Equally important was the film's reception in mainland China at a time when the Chinese box office was still developing. Shaolin Soccer grossed over 25 million yen, RMB, a significant figure for the early 2000s. Its blend of cultural pride and modern humor resonated strongly with mainland audiences. The film's runaway success helped build confidence in Chinese-language blockbusters, paving the way for later domestic hits. It proved that mainland audiences would flock to a film that offered spectacle comparable to Hollywood, while still rooted in local identity. International success crossing borders. The film was not confined to Hong Kong and mainland China. Distributed internationally, including by Miramax in the United States, though with edits and dubbing that Chow himself disliked, Shaolin Soccer grossed approximately $42, 50 million worldwide. For a Hong Kong comedy, this was a staggering achievement. In Southeast Asia, particularly Malaysia and Singapore, the film performed exceptionally well, leveraging Stephen Chow's popularity. In Japan and Korea, it drew respectable numbers thanks to the cross-cultural appeal of martial arts comedy, even in Western markets where foreign-language comedies often struggled. Shaolin Soccer found a cult following. Its quirky premise and outrageous visuals made it a sleeper hit on DVD and streaming. Later on, marketing selling absurdity is epic. The marketing campaign leaned heavily on the novelty of the concept. Shaolin monks playing soccer with superhuman abilities. Posters highlighted the flaming soccer ball, Chow's determined expression, and the team's ragged yet heroic stance. Trailers emphasized both slapstick humor and epic slow-motion action, targeting multiple audience groups simultaneously. Interestingly, the marketing in Asia leaned into cultural nostalgia, framing the film as a revival of Shaolin spirit, while in the West, trailers highlighted the outrageous CGI spectacle, selling it almost like a parody of sports movies. This dual marketing strategy expanded the film's reach across cultural contexts. Return on investment from gamble to goldmine. Given its $10 million U.S. budget, the film's worldwide earnings represented at least a 4 to about 5 times return on investment, not even accounting for later home media sales, streaming rights, and merchandising. By Hong Kong industry standards, this was extraordinary. It demonstrated that investing in larger budgets and advanced effects could pay off even for comedies, a genre typically considered lower risk but lower return. Impact on the industry, financial ripple. The commercial success of Shaolin Soccer sent shockwaves through the Hong Kong and mainland industries. Studios began to see potential in high-concept comedies and effects-driven spectacles. The film's financial triumph gave Stephen Chow greater freedom for his next project, Kung Fu Hustle 2004, which had an even larger budget and went on to become an international sensation. Moreover, it set the stage for mainland Chinese cinema to pursue blockbuster ambitions. The confidence gained from Shaolin Soccer's box office run contributed to the rise of the 2000s as a period of experimentation where local industries increasingly aimed for Hollywood-style global competitiveness. Legacy of the box office performance. The financial legacy of Shaolin Soccer lies not only in numbers but in its symbolic meaning. It proved that a culturally specific absurdist comedy, rooted in Chinese martial arts tradition, could achieve global resonance and financial success. It wasn't just another local hit. It was a statement that Hong Kong cinema could innovate, expand, and thrive even in the face of Hollywood dominance. By the end of its run, Shaolin Soccer wasn't just a hit movie. It was a cultural and economic turning point, a case study in how creativity and risk could bring local cinema to the international stage. Interesting facts about Shaolin Soccer 2001. Behind the spectacle of flaming footballs and wire-assisted kung fu kicks, Shaolin Soccer carries a fascinating web of stories, accidents, improvisations, and cultural quirks that reveal just how much passion and experimentation went into its making. Stephen Chow's masterpiece is not only remembered for its visual comedy and box office triumph, but also for the unusual, behind-the-scenes details that shaped its identity. Some of these facts deepen our appreciation for the artistry, while others highlight the unpredictable chaos of filmmaking. Together, they make Shaolin Soccer as legendary off-screen as it is one-creen. One, the Bruce Lee connection. Danny Chan's career-defining Danny Chan Kwakwan, who played the goalkeeper parodying Bruce Lee, was cast largely because of his uncanny resemblance to the martial arts legend. Chow leaned into this similarity, designing Chan's mannerisms, costumes, and even expressions to mimic Lee's iconic style. What began as parody became a career-defining moment. Chan later went on to portray Bruce Lee in the TV series The Legend of Bruce Lee. 2008, cementing him as Lee's most convincing on-screen double. Shaolin Soccer quite literally launched his international career. 2. Vicky Shao's real sacrifice, the shaved head scene. One of the most emotional moments in the film is when Mui, played by Vicky Shao, shaves her head after being humiliated. While wigs could have been used, Shao chose to actually cut her hair on camera, giving the scene its raw authenticity. For an actress who was then a rising star in mainland China, this was a bold professional choice. The vulnerability on her face in that moment isn't just acting, it's partly real. The sacrifice made in service of the story. 3. Improvised comedy. Chow's perfectionism meets spontaneity. Stephen Chow is infamous for his perfectionist approach, often demanding dozens of takes to nail a single comedic beat. Yet paradoxically, many of the funniest moments in Shaolin Soccer came from improvisation. Chow encouraged his actors to exaggerate reactions or try out ridiculous facial expressions in the middle of takes. Some of these unscripted choices, like exaggerated groans after failed kicks or awkward pauses in dialogue, made it into the final cut, giving the comedy a sense of unpredictability. 4. The struggles with CGI Hong Kong's new frontier. The film relied on over 400 digital effects shots, but Hong Kong's CGI industry in 2000 was still in its infancy. Much of the post-production team had to learn techniques on the job, experimenting with blending wire work and digital elements. Several effect sequences, such as the fireball kick and the net stretching shots, took months longer than expected. Early versions reportedly looked too cartoonish, forcing animators to refine the balance until Chow was satisfied. In many ways, Shaolin Soccer was a training ground that prepared the industry for more polished effects in later Hong Kong blockbusters. 5A. Scene too ridiculous for release. Chow originally filmed a comedic subplot where the Shaolin team encounters rival street performers who use bizarre kung fu talents to earn money. The sequence reportedly ran long and slowed down the pacing, so it was cut from the final theatrical release. However, snippets of this footage appeared in extended versions of the film distributed in certain markets. Fans who have seen these deleted scenes note that while they were funny, their absence in the main cut helped maintain narrative flow. 6. Homages to classic Hong Kong cinema. Sharp-eyed viewers can spot numerous references to Hong Kong cinema classics. Chow's direction intentionally mimics the melodramatic framing of 1970s martial arts films, while the exaggerated villain of Team Evil parodies tropes from old kung fu sagas. Mua's Tai Chi Do kneading sequence, meanwhile, is a subtle nod to the tradition of showing spiritual discipline through domestic labor, a common motif in Wuya storytelling. Even the over-the-top musical cues parody the way Shaw Brothers films elevated small gestures into mythic moments. 7. Real injuries on set. Despite the comedic tone, filming was physically demanding and some actors sustained injuries. Wire work often caused bruises and strains, especially for performers not trained in martial arts. Lam Chung, who played the mighty steel leg, reportedly injured his back during repeated stunt rehearsals. Man-tat, playing the injured coach, was actually suffering from real health issues during filming, which added authenticity to his weary, limping performance. 8. Miramax's interference in the USESH release. When Shaolin Soccer was distributed internationally, particularly in the United States, Miramax acquired the rights but made significant changes. The film was dubbed heavily cut, losing around 20 minutes of footage and restructured for Western audiences. Chow himself was dissatisfied with this version, feeling it diluted the film's rhythm and cultural flavor. Thankfully, uncut versions were later released on DVD and streaming, allowing international fans to experience the film as originally intended. 9. The Meteoric Ball, a digital innovation inspired by anime. One of the film's most iconic visual effects, the flaming soccer ball streaking across the field, was directly inspired by Japanese anime and video games. Chow wanted the ball to feel like a Hadouken fireball from Street Fighter or a special attack in anime like Captain Tsubasa. Animators studied anime frames to replicate the exaggerated motion blur and glowing aura, translating 2D energy blasts into 3D cinematic effects. This blending of anime aesthetics with Hong Kong filmmaking was groundbreaking at the time. 10. A bridge between comedy and blockbuster cinema. Perhaps the most interesting fact of all is that Shaolin Soccer was never meant to be a safe project at a time when Hong Kong comedies were usually shot on modest budgets with limited international ambitions. Chow insisted on blockbuster-level spectacle. The fact that this gamble paid off both financially and critically proved that Hong Kong cinema could reinvent itself for the global stage without abandoning its identity. Why these facts matter taken together, these behind-the-scenes details reveal a story of risk, improvisation, cultural homage, and innovation. They remind us that the laughter and awe we experience watching Shaolin Soccer were built on countless small sacrifices and bold creative choices. From Xiao Wei's shaved head to Danny Chan's Bruce Lee, transformation from Miramax's cuts to anime-inspired CGI, every layer of trivia enriches our understanding of the film's legacy, audience reception, and critical acclaim of Shaolin Soccer 2001. When Shaolin Soccer debuted in 2001, it did not arrive quietly. It landed like one of Sing's flaming kicks, exploding into both popular culture and critical circles. The film's reception was not just about box office numbers, but about how audiences and critics from different cultural contexts interpreted its humor, visual spectacle, and emotional sincerity. For Hong Kong and mainland China, it was a cultural event. For international viewers, it became a quirky cult sensation. In both cases, the film left a lasting impression that went far beyond being just a comedy. Audience reception in Hong Kong, a phenomenon of laughter and pride. In Hong Kong, Shaolin Soccer was received with extraordinary enthusiasm. Cinemas reported sold-out screenings with crowds spilling into late-night shows. The laughter it provoked was communal. Audiences reacted loudly, cheering during soccer battles as if they were watching a real match. For many, the film tapped into a sense of cultural pride. Here was a local production using cutting-edge visual effects to rival Hollywood blockbusters while still rooted in Hong Kong's own comedic tradition. Viewers responded strongly to the underdog narrative. The story of forgotten Shaolin monks regaining dignity resonated with audiences in a city grappling with identity after the 1997 handover. Laughter was not just entertainment, it was catharsis. Mainland China, nostalgia meets spectacle. On the mainland, the reception was equally enthusiastic. Audiences connected with the way Chia wove traditional martial arts values into a modern setting, reviving cultural nostalgia in a playful, accessible way. For younger viewers, the film was a refreshing alternative to Western imports. For older generations, it offered reassurance that Shaolin spirit still had relevance. Crowds in China particularly adored Mui's Tai Chi sequences, which blended everyday labor with spiritual strength. These scenes sparked discussions about how traditional values could survive in a rapidly modernizing society. Box office. Numbers reflected this enthusiasm, turning the film into one of the most successful Chinese-language films of its international audiences, cult status, and mixed entry in the West. Shaolin Soccer initially had a strange path. Miramax acquired distribution rights and released a cut-down dubbed version. While this version diluted some cultural nuances, it introduced the film to a wider audience who were dazzled by its bizarre mix of kung fu parody, sports drama, and surreal CGI. For many Western viewers, the sheer absurdity of monks kicking flaming soccer balls was unlike anything they had seen before. While mainstream audiences found it eccentric, cinephiles and cult film enthusiasts embraced it wholeheartedly. Screenings at film festivals such as Toronto and Tribeca drew enthusiastic responses, with critics calling it a joyous blend of East and West. In Europe, especially in France and the UK, it found devoted fans who admired its mix of parody and sincerity. On DVD and later streaming, the uncut subtitled version gained a cult following, ensuring its place in the canon of global comedy classics. Critical acclaim, humor meets technical innovation. Critics across Asia praised the film's balance of comedy, action, and heart. Reviews highlighted Stephen Chow's ability to elevate slapstick absurdity into something almost poetic. The South China Morning Post hailed it as a landmark in Hong Kong cinema, proving that comedy could rival blockbuster spectacle. Internationally, critics were fascinated by its genre-bending audacity. Roger Ebert described it as a film of cheerfully lunatic energy that embraced its nonsense without apology. Many critics noted that while the film was ridiculous, it was also sincere. Its emotional beats worked because Chow refused to wink at the audience. This blend of parody and heart distinguished it from shallow spoof comedies, awards, and recognition. Shaolin Soccer was showered with accolades in Asia. At the Hong Kong Film Awards, it won Best Picture, Best Director, Stephen Chow, and Best Actor Xiao, along with multiple technical awards for editing, cinematography, and visual effects. This was remarkable for a comedy, a genre often overlooked in award circuits. Internationally, it was nominated at film festivals and featured on year-end lists of best foreign films. Its recognition went beyond entertainment. It was acknowledged as a milestone that pushed Hong Kong cinema into the digital age, audience memory beyond the box office. For audiences, the legacy of Shaolin Soccer is not just about tickets sold, but about memories created. Many recall the experience of watching it in packed cinemas where laughter and applause echoed like at a sporting. Its catchphrases and exaggerated visuals became part of popular culture. Children imitated the steel leg kick on playgrounds while teenagers quoted lines in casual banter. Even today, clips circulate online proving the film's comedic timing remains timeless. While reception matters, the audience and critical acclaim for Shaolin Soccer underscored a larger truth. Comedy, when executed with vision and sincerity, can transcend cultural barriers. Viewers in Hong Kong, China, Europe, and America laughed for different reasons, but they all laughed together. Critics, meanwhile, respected it not just as comedy, but as cinematic craft. This dual reception, mass entertainment, and critical appreciation is rare. It explains why Shaolin Soccer is remembered not just as a hit, but as a milestone, a film that made audiences roar with laughter while also making the industry rethink what was possible. Final review and cinematic verdict of Shaolin Soccer 2001. There are films that make us laugh, and there are films that inspire us. Rarely does one manage to do both at once, and rarer still does it do so through sheer absurdity. Stephen Chow's Shaolin Soccer stands in that unique space, at once a parody, a heartfelt underdog story, and a technological experiment that redefined the trajectory of Hong Kong cinema. Looking back, it is not merely a comedy about monks kicking flaming footballs. It is a film that fuses cultural nostalgia with cinematic innovation, sincerity with nonsense, and parody with genuine emotional power, emotional resonance beneath the absurdity. On the surface, Shaolin Soccer is ludicrous. Shaolin monks turn their ancient martial techniques into supernatural soccer skills. Balls burst into fireballs, galmets ripple like cosmic fabric. But underneath the spectacle lies a story of forgotten men finding purpose, of tradition surviving, modern neglect of dignity rediscovered through unity. This duality is why the film endures. Audiences laugh at the madness, but they also cheer sincerely when Singh and his brothers triumph against Team Evil. It is parody that paradoxically generates real inspiration, performances that ground the fantasy. The cast performances serve as the film's emotional anchors. Stephen Chow as Singh embodies the dreamer, balancing comic exaggeration with a deep sincerity that makes us root for him. Man-tat, playing the fallen coach, brings vulnerability and gravitas, reminding us that redemption stories work best when guided by mentors who have themselves fallen. Vicky Xiao as Mui provides the film with its beating heart. Her quiet dignity and eventual empowerment give the story its tender counterweight. Danny Chan's Bruce Lee, inspired goalkeeper, meanwhile adds both parody and myth, paying homage to a cultural icon while fueling the team's heroic aura. Without these performances, the absurd premise would collapse into farce. Instead, they give the film emotional grounding, making even its silliest moments strangely moving. Technical mastery in service of comedy, cinematography, editing, and sound. Design work in tandem to elevate comedy into spectacle. Wide shots capture the epic scale of wirework stunts, while rapid cuts punctuate comedic timing with surgical precision. The sound design exaggerates every kick, swoosh, and fall, turning ordinary actions into comic book moments. Most importantly, the CGI, though imperfect by modern standards, was revolutionary for Hong Kong cinema. It transformed soccer matches into martial arts jewels, marrying sports and kung fu in a way that felt natural within the film's surreal universe. Music as emotional blueprint, the score's balance of parody and sincerity mirrors the film itself. Triumphant orchestral swells parody Hollywood sports anthems, yet they still stir genuine feelings of inspiration. Traditional Chinese motifs underscore Shaolin heritage, reminding us that this is more than slapstick. It is a reimagining of cultural identity. Mu's Tai Chi theme, gentle yet powerful, remains one of the film's most emotionally resonant musical cues. In the climactic match, the music escalates, alongside visual spectacle, ensuring that the audience not only laughs but feels awe at the absurd grandeur. From pre-production dreams to post-production innovation, every stage of the filmmaking journey contributes to the final verdict. Pre-production storyboarding and wirework planning allowed impossible sequences to be imagined with precision. Filming tested the cast's endurance as wire stunts and comedic retakes stretched physical and emotional limits. Post-production stitched it all together with groundbreaking CGI, exaggerated Foley effects, and vibrant color. Grading. The result is not chaos, but carefully orchestrated madness, proving Chiao's perfectionism was worth the art. Cost, financial triumph, and cultural legacy. Commercially, the film was a revelation. With a modest budget of around 10 million US dollars, it grossed over 40 million US dollars worldwide, breaking records in Hong Kong and becoming one of the most successful Chinese language films of its time. Its financial success mattered not just for numbers, but for symbolism. It proved that Hong Kong cinema could compete with Hollywood in both spectacle and profitability. It gave the industry courage to dream bigger, paving the way. For blockbusters like Kung Fu Hustle, critical acclaim, and audience devotion, critics embraced the film as joyous. Lunacy, praising its ability to balance slapstick with sincerity, audiences embraced it as both comedy and cultural pride. From Hong Kong's packed cinemas to cult screenings in Europe and the U.S., the film united viewers across cultures in laughter. Awards cemented its status, but the real victory lay in how deeply it embedded itself in popular memory. To this day, scenes and catchphrases circulate online, proving its comedic timing remains timeless. The cinematic verdict why it endures. Ultimately, Shaolin Soccer is not just a comedy. It is a cinematic experiment that worked. It dared to merge genres, blend tradition with modernity, and balance parody with heart. It is a film where spectacle does not replace sincerity but enhances it, where laughter and awe coexist, where the ridiculous becomes profound. The verdict: Shaolin Soccer is a masterpiece of its kind. Not flawless, but unforgettable. It redefined the limits of Hong Kong cinema, proved the global potential of local storytelling, and left behind a legacy of joy, pride, and inspiration. It is a reminder that cinema need not choose between making us laugh and making us feel. It can do both brilliantly. What if monks of Shaolin Temple, masters of Kung Fu, used their spiritual training not in battlefields, but on a football field? What if martial discipline fused with slapstick comedy, creating a new kind of sports epic? That's the magic question Shaolin Soccer dared to ask. Directed by and starring Stephen Chow within Man-tat, Vicky Xiao, Zhao Wei, Patrick T., and Danny Chan, this 2001 Hong Kong Chinese production by Universe Entertainment redefined genre cinema. The story follows Sing Chow, a Shaolin monk who dreams of spreading Kung Fu to the modern world. After meeting a down-on-his-luck soccer coach, Man-tat, he recruits his Shaolin brothers to form an unlikely football team. Their martial arts mastery transforms soccer into a battlefield of superhuman spectacle, facing off against corporate greed and corruption, culminating in the ultimate underdog showdown, storytelling, and visual style. The film's plot plays like a mythic fable wrapped in slapstick comedy. Imagine monks in torn robes leaping into air with Matrix-style slow-motion kicks, footballs turning into fireballs, and a goalkeeper who blocks shots with the calm of Buddha. It's both absurd and poetic. Stephen Chow's signature mole-nonsense comedy style that blends parody, sincerity, and surreal fantasy. Starcast and character performances. Stephen Chow is Sing the dreamer, balancing slapstick humor with heartfelt idealism. Han-tat as a golden leg Feng, a washed-up coach seeking redemption. His chemistry with Chow provides the film's heart. Vicky Xiao as Mui, a humble baker with hidden Tai Chi mastery. Her romance with Sing adds tenderness. Danny Chan as Empty Hands, channeling Bruce Lee vibes as the fierce goalkeeper. The performances shine in caricature, but also in emotional beats, making this more than parody. It's myth wrapped in comedy. Technical department. The direction pushes Hong Kong's CGI frontier. At the time, the visual effects were groundbreaking in Asia. Football matches felt like epic battles. Cinematography used exaggerated angles, wide lenses, and sweeping camera movements to amplify both comedy and intensity. Editing was rhythmic, almost like a musical. Action scenes cut like choreography, music and emotional resonance. The soundtrack fuses heroic orchestral scoring with playful beats, echoing classic martial arts cinema while parodying it. At moments of slow motion fantasy, the music swells like a epic, reminding us this is not just a sports film, it's a martial fairy tale. Pre-production, Stephen Chow's concept was daring. In the late 1990s, Hong Kong cinema was struggling against Hollywood dominance. Chow envisioned a project that would blend martial arts heritage with universal comedy. Extensive storyboarding went into visualizing how Shaolin techniques could be translated into exaggerated football maneuvers. Location scouting brought a mix of gritty Hong Kong streets and stylized football fields. Filming shot across Hong Kong, the film was a logistical challenge requiring coordination of stunts, wire work, and CGI. Chow's perfectionism meant multiple takes with long shooting schedules for the soccer match sequences. The cast endured physically demanding choreography, blending martial arts precision with football realism. Post-production, the heavy use of CGI and wire effects was revolutionary for Hong Kong cinema at the time. Footballs became flaming meteors, goal nets stretched like cosmic webs, and slow-motion effects emphasized impact. Color grading heightened the surreal tone. Bright skies, hyper-real grass fields, exaggerated textures that leaned into the comic book feel. Budget and box office. Budget around 10 million USD. Box office, a phenomenal $42.50 million worldwide, making it one of the highest grossing Hong Kong films of all time. In mainland China, it broke records and helped usher in a new era of Chinese blockbusters. Interesting facts. Danny Chan's performance as the goalkeeper directly referenced Bruce Lee's iconic looks and moves. Stephen Chow insisted on mixing professional football players with martial artists for authenticity. The film originally had a darker ending, but test screenings pushed Chow to go for a triumphant finale. It was banned in some regions for being too silly, only to later gain cult status. Audience reception and critical acclaim. Audiences adored it. Critics praised its mix of sports satire, martial arts homage, and Looney Tunes-style absurdity. In the West, it became a cult hit, influencing films like Kung Fu Hustle 2004. Some critics found it nonsensical, but that nonsense is its genius. Final review and cinematic verdict, Shaolin. Soccer is not just a comedy, it's a reinvention of sports cinema. It blends kung fu mythology, slapstick parody, and underdog triumph into a cultural phenomenon. The film's emotional resonance comes from its sincerity beneath the fireballs and flying kicks. It's a story of dreamers who refuse to be forgotten. Thematic analysis. The film explores themes of tradition versus modernity, the commercialization of sports, and the resilience of cultural identity. The Shaolin brothers represent lost values of discipline and honor, reasserting them in a corrupt, profit-driven world. Script and dialogue. Tone, playful, nonsensical, and yet emotionally sincere. Lines that seem absurd carry deeper truths about perseverance, humility, and brotherhood. Pacing and editing. The editing is relentless. Fast cuts for comedy, slow motion for epic tension. Matches are structured like battles with rising stakes and cathartic payoffs. Production. Aesthetics. Costumes exaggerate Shaolin monk robes turned into football jerseys. Lighting shifts between gritty realism and dreamlike fantasy. Set designs from dusty alleys to glowing stadiums mirror the clash of old-world spirituality and modern spectacle. Conclusion. Why it endures. Shaolin soccer is remembered not just because it made us laugh, but because it dared to dream. It asked, what if ancient martial arts could bring magic to the everyday world? In doing so, Stephen Chow created a sports film like no other. Epic, hilarious, heartfelt, and timeless. Star cast and character performances in Shaolin Soccer 2001. In Shaolin Soccer, Stephen Chow assembled a cast that was more than just actors playing exaggerated roles. They were embodiment of archetypes, comic exaggerations, and living metaphors of tradition colliding with modernity. The film's genius lies not only in its visual comedy and martial arts spectacle, but also in the way its characters are performed with a blend of sincerity, parody, and emotional depth. Each actor brings a theatrical intensity that transforms what could have been a slapstick parody into something both heartfelt and mythic. Stephen Chow as Sing the Dreamer and Comic Prophet. Stephen Chow's role as Sing, the central and protagonist, anchors the narrative. Sing is a man obsessed with reviving Shaolin martial arts in a modern world that has largely forgotten it. Chow's comedic genius lies in his ability to play the character with an almost naive sincerity, delivering lines that are absurd on the surface, but spoken with such conviction that they resonate emotionally. His wide-eyed optimism and awkward physicality make him both a clown and a visionary. What's fascinating about Chow's performance is the balance between slapstick falling, grimacing, cartoonish exaggeration, and the undercurrent of melancholy. Sing is a character who refuses to abandon tradition even when mocked, and Chow's portrayal gives him the aura of a tragic, comic prophet of Shaolin values. Ning Man-tat is Golden Leg Fun. The fallen Ning Man-tat, Chow's frequent collaborator, plays Fun, the once glorious soccer star whose career was destroyed by betrayal and injury. His performance is textured with both bitterness and quiet longing. Ning embodies the archetype of the disgraced master seeking redemption, and his chemistry with Chow is electric, serving as both comedic foil and emotional anchor. Fun is pathetic at first, limping, coughing, and ridiculed by former teammates. Yet through Angel's performance, he grows into a figure of resilience and dignity. His mentorship of Sing and the Shaolin brothers is understated, often communicated through small gestures and weary expressions. Ning Man-tat plays Feng as both a tragic relic and an unlikely hero, and his performance is one of the film's emotional cause. Vicky Xiao as Mui, the humble goddess of Tai Chi. Vicky Xiao's role as Mui, the shy bakery worker with a face scar and hidden Tai Chi talent, provides the film's most tender subplot. Mui represents purity and inner strength disguised beneath insecurity. Xiao's performance is subdued compared to the bombast of her co-stars, and that subtlety gives her character emotional weight. Her downcast eyes, hesitant smile, and quiet voice contrast the film's loud absurdities, grounding the story with human vulnerability. When Moody uses Tai Chi to knead dough or later to deflect attacks, Zhao delivers it with a calm grace that transforms her into an ethereal presence. Her chemistry with that. Stephen Chow is delicate, built on shy glances and awkward silences, culminating in one of the film's most touching romantic arcs. Danny Chan Kwakwan has empty hands. The Bruce Lee disciple Danny Chan's performance as the goalkeeper, often called Empty Hands, is iconic for its deliberate homage to Bruce Lee. Chan physically resembles Lee, and the film uses this resemblance for both parody and tribute. His performance blends seriousness with exaggerated martial bravado, every movement, glare, and posture mimicking Lee's legendary presence. The comedy lies in the fact that this exaggerated intensity is applied to soccer, but Chan never breaks the illusion. He plays the Bier role dead serious, which amplifies the comedy and simultaneously honors Lee's cinematic spirit. His nunchaku saves and intense yells are absurd, but they resonate as martial discipline applied to sport. The Shaolin brothers, archetypes of lost glory. Each Shaolin brother embodies a martial archetype, turned into parody. Ironhead Tin Kai Man, once known for his invincible headbutts, now a balding, overweight wreck. His performance leans heavily into physical comedy with exaggerated groans and facial contortions that highlight both decay and hidden power. Mighty Steel Leg Lam Such Chung, a disciple who becomes the team's powerhouse striker. His comedic timing, especially in overplaying frustration and sudden bursts of confidence, adds to the underdog charm. Lightweight brother Juan, known for his agility, his movements border on cartoonish. He embodies the Shaolin aesthetic of balance and speed. Exaggerated for laughs, but still rooted in martial lab discipline. Their performances function as caricatures of men broken by the modern world, rediscovering dignity. Through Shaolin, Patrick Tixo and evil team players, corporate villains in exaggeration. Patrick Tixo and the actors playing the team evil characters deliver performances straight out of Wixie, a villain dripping with arrogance and cruelty. Their exaggerated sneers, slow claps, and mocking laughter border on pantomime, but that theatricality works perfectly in Chiao's universe. They represent not just antagonists, but metaphors for commercialization, corruption, and greed in sports. Chemistry and ensemble work. What elevates the film's performances is ensemble chemistry. Chow orchestrates his cast like a symphony, each actor hitting notes of absurdity, tragedy, and sincerity at just the right moments. The contrast between Chiao's optimism, Ingi's bitterness, Jiao's tenderness, and Chan's parody of Bruce Lee creates a Tonal balance that makes the film both comedic and emotionally resonant. Legacy of performances. The performances in Shaolin Soccer transcend their comedic roots. Stephen Chow and Man-tat's mentor, protege relationship became one of Hong Kong cinema's most beloved duos. Vicky. Zhao's portrayal of Mu resonated with audiences for its emotional depth, making her more than a sidekick, but a symbol of quiet resilience. Danny Chan's homage to Bruce Lee propelled his career, later earning him the role of Lee in The Legend of Bruce Lee, 2008. The brilliance of the cast lies in their ability to play absurdity with absolute sincerity. They never wink at the camera or play for irony. Instead, they embody their roles with seriousness, which paradoxically makes the comedy more powerful and the emotional beats more sincere. Technical department in Shaolin Soccer 2001. When we talk about Shaolin Soccer, most audiences remember the outrageous football matches where balls blaze like meteors, players soar like deities, and goals explode with comic grandeur. But beneath the spectacle lies a technical achievement that was for its time groundbreaking in Hong Kong cinema. The film's technical department, spanning direction, cinematography, editing, visual effects, production design, and sound, was carefully orchestrated by Stephen Chow to blend martial arts traditions with digital wizardry. What resulted was a surreal but cohesive cinematic style that both parodied and honored the legacy of Hong Kong action film. Direction. Stephen Chow's vision of comedy is epic. Stephen Chow didn't just direct Shaolin Soccer, he engineered its rhythm. His style, known Dewey, as Mol Tao or nonsense comedy, thrives on absurdity delivered with deadpan sincerity. But in this film, Chow fused that with a mythic grandeur usually reserved for wuya epics. His direction treats every mundane soccer play as if it were a legendary martial arts jewel. This duality slapstick parody staged with epic seriousness was only possible through meticulous technical coordination. Every gag is framed with precision, every exaggerated stunt balanced with timing that makes the absurd believable. Chow's directional brilliance lies in knowing when to exaggerate and when to hold back. He stages comedic scenes with quick cuts, rapid pacing, and close-ups of exaggerated expressions. Conversely, the soccer matches are treated with sweeping, operatic camera movements, slow-motion sequences, and wide shots that heighten the drama. By directing his actors to play absurdity with seriousness and then framing that seriousness with cinematic grandeur, Chow created a technical style that felt fresh even beyond Hong Kong's borders. Cinematography between realism and fantasy. The cinematography, led by Kwong Tingwo, walks a delicate line between gritty realism and hyper-stylized fantasy. Everyday street scenes, the bakery, alleys, dusty fields are shot with naturalistic lighting and handheld. These choices ground the characters in a recognizably flawed world. Yet once the soccer matches begin, the visuals transform. The camera becomes fluid, often soaring with the ball itself mimicking its trajectory across the field. Lighting also contributes to this duality. Training. Scenes are bathed in warm, dusty light, evoking nostalgia for Shaolin discipline. Stadium matches, by contrast, use harsh, high-contrast lighting to highlight the gladiatorial atmosphere, echoing both modern sports broadcasts and stylized wuxia battlefields. Chow deliberately pushed the contrast, making soccer fields look more like battle arenas than sporting venues. Editing rhythm of comedy and combat editing is crucial in Shaolin Soccer. The comedic pacing depends on sharp cuts that enhance physical gags. Much like Chaplin or Caden, Chow's editors used rhythmic cross-cutting between wide chaos and close-up reaction shots to amplify humor. A missed kick, a pratfall, or a ball to the face gains intensity when juxtaposed with shocked faces of bystanders. For action sequences, however, the editing slows down. Long takes with exaggerated slow motion heighten tension, as if the audience is watching a kung fu duel rather than a soccer match. This oscillation between hyperfast and exaggeratedly slow editing rhythms keeps the audience engaged, constantly shifting tone but never losing coherence. Visual effects. Hong Kong's leap into CGI, perhaps the most defining Technical achievement of Shaolin Soccer was its pioneering use of CGI in Hong Kong cinema. Produced on a modest budget compared to Hollywood films of the era, the visual effects nonetheless created a spectacle that felt revolutionary. Balls transformed into blazing meteors. Players launched themselves across the field like missiles, and nets stretched into cosmic webs. Each effect was exaggerated but rooted in martial arts physics, borrowing from the visual vocabulary of wuxia, Waofu flight, energy blasts, supernatural auras, and transplanting it onto a football pitch. The VFX team employed techniques that mirrored Hollywood's late 1990s digital world. Boom, The Matrix Star Wars Episode 1, but with a distinctly Hong Kong flair. Instead of photorealism, Chow leaned into exaggeration. The effects intentionally felt cartoonish, aligning with the film's comedic tone. This choice was critical. By avoiding Hollywood's pursuit of realism, Chow made the CGI feel like a natural extension of his absurdist world production design, merging Shaolin with modernity. The sets and locations were deliberately chosen to juxtapose Shaolin tradition with urban decay. The Shaolin brothers live in squalor, surrounded by crumbling infrastructure, their old world skills forgotten by a society chasing modernity. The soccer fields are dusty, uneven, almost tragic until transformed by Shaolin power. The final stadium is a carefully designed stage of spectacle, resembling both a gladiatorial arena and a modern sports broadcast. The uniforms of Team Evil, slick, dark, militaristic, contrast with the Shaolin team's ragged black robes turned jerseys, visually underlining the clash between corporate corruption and spiritual tradition. Sound design, comedy through acoustics. The sound department amplified the absurdity through exaggerated audio. Punches land with thunderous cracks, footsteps reverberate like drums, and soccer balls cut the air like missiles. Each sound is heightened to the point of parody, yet mixed with enough intensity to maintain dramatic weight. Even dialogue is treated with sonic exaggeration. When characters yell, echoes distort their voices. When Moonli kneads dough with Tai Chi, every stretch and fold is accompanied by rhythmic sound effects that suggest both domesticity and martial discipline, music heroic parody. The score combines traditional martial arts motifs with triumphant sports anthems. Sweeping orchestral cues parody the melodrama of wuxia films, while upbeat tracks echo sports films like Rocky. The music never settles into one genre. It oscillates between parody and sincerity, guiding the audience through tonal shifts without disorientation. Technical synthesis. Why it works? The genius of Shaolin Soccer's technical department lies in synthesis. No element, direction, cinematography, VFX sound editing tries to be realistic. Instead, each is exaggerated, in harmony with the others. The absurd becomes believable because every department commits fully to the exaggeration. The result is a film that looks like no other. It is at once parody and epic comedy and spectacle. Stephen Chow and his technical team transformed a low-budget Hong Kong comedy into a visually inventive landmark, setting the stage for Kung Fu Hustle 2004, which expanded these techniques even further. Music and emotional resonance in Shaolin Soccer 2001. In Stephen Chow's Shaolin Soccer, audiences are often dazzled by the flying kicks, CGI-enhanced footballs, and slapstick absurdity. Yet beneath the chaos lies a carefully crafted musical architecture that amplifies not only the comedy, but also the emotional core of the story. Music in this film is not background noise. It is a narrative engine that shapes how viewers feel about each scene, from laughter to awe to quiet tenderness. By blending traditional Chinese motifs, martial arts, opera dramatics, and contemporary sports movie anthems, the soundtrack becomes an emotional glue that binds absurd spectacle with human sincerity. The dual nature of the score, parody and sincerity, the most fascinating aspect of the score is its ability to move seamlessly between parody and genuine emotional resonance. At times, the music mocks the melodramatic traditions of kung fu cinema, swelling with exaggerated grandeur for something as trivial as kicking a ball. At other moments, the same orchestral style is used earnestly, reminding the audience that beneath the nonsense comedy is a story of underdogs reclaiming dignity. For instance, when the Shaolin brothers reunite to form their soccer team, the score swells with heroic trumpets and martial drums parodying the solemn tone of ancient martial epics. But the sincerity in the composition transforms parody into inspiration. We laugh at the absurdity, yet we feel genuine admiration for these washed-up monks finding purpose again. This balance between parody and sincerity is the hallmark of Chow's musical vision. Traditional Chinese elements? Tying martial arts to sports, the film makes deliberate use of traditional Chinese instruments, Oogeng bamboo flutes, especially in moments when Shaolin values are emphasized. When Mui demonstrates her Tai Chi through kneading dough, the score features a soft flowing melody reminiscent of folk music. The music here mirrors her movements, circular, graceful, understated. It communicates Mui's inner strength without words, highlighting her as more than just a side character. Similarly, when the Shaolin brothers practice their moves, traditional percussion, gongs, temple drums, punctuates their exaggerated techniques, linking their football training to Shaolin ritual. This choice keeps the film rooted in cultural identity, reminding the audience that this is not just a sports comedy, but a story about preserving tradition in modern times. The sports movie anthem, Triumph Through Absurdity. Parallel to its Chinese roots, Shaolin soccer borrows heavily from the Western sports movie musical language. Triumphant orchestral swells, driving percussion, and inspirational themes underscore training montages and final matches. These cues echo Hollywood staples like Rocky or Chariots of Fire. What makes them remarkable in Shaolin soccer is the context they accompany. Utterly ridiculous visuals and some information about it. How do you like our today's video? Please let us know by commenting. And if you like this video, please like it, share it, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching.